The rain came down in sheets, relentless and cold, blurring the edges of everything it touched. Aisha stood under the flickering street lamp at the corner of Seder Road, her umbrella useless against the wind. In her trembling hands was a damp, crumpled envelope, the letter that had arrived that morning. Inside it, just a few lines that could change everything. We are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted into the International Academy of Fine Arts. London. Her heart had leaped when she read it. But now, standing there at the crossroads between her old life and an unknown future, the weight of that joy felt heavier than she'd imagined. Behind her, through the mist and rain, the faded sign of her father's repair shop glowed weakly. Karim's Fixicial. The paint was peeling, the roof leaked every monsoon, and yet it was home. Every nail, every smell of oil and metal, carried memories of her childhood, laughter, lessons, and long nights spent sketching on scraps of cardboard while her father worked beside her. She could still hear his voice echoing in her mind. Steady and patient. Art doesn't fix engines, my girl, but it fixes people, and that's harder. He'd said it years ago when she first told him she wanted to be a painter. She had laughed then, not realizing how deep those words would sink. Now, as cars hissed past and the world moved on around her, Aisha felt frozen in time. Her dream was finally within reach, yet it came at a cost she wasn't sure she could bear. Her father's hands had grown slower, his cough deeper. He never complained, but she noticed how long it took him to stand after kneeling under a car. Who would look after him if she left? Who would keep the lights on in that old shop when the bills came due? She looked down at the letter again, her name printed neatly at the top. It felt like the world calling her forward, yet something inside her whispered to stay. Lightning cracked in the distance, briefly lighting up the street, and she saw her reflection in a puddle. Young, uncertain, but alive with possibility. The rain fell harder, and Aisha realized that sometimes the biggest decisions come quietly, not with a shout, but with a single, trembling step forward. The bell above the shop door jingled as Aisha stepped inside, shaking the rain from her hair. The smell of engine oil and metal filled the room, a scent that clung to every memory she had of her father. Karim sat on his old stool near the workbench, squinting through his fogged glasses as he cleaned a carburetor under the yellow light of a hanging bulb. He didn't look up at first, but a faint smile tugged at his lips. "You've been standing out there for 20 minutes, he said, his tone gentle but knowing. Aisha hesitated, clutching the letter behind her back. "I was just thinking about the letter," he asked, finally raising his eyes to meet hers. They were warm and patient, though the years had drawn soft lines at the corners. He had already guessed. Of course, he always did. She nodded slowly, unable to speak for a moment. The sound of the rain drumming on the tin roof filled the silence between them. Her father set the tool down and leaned back, wiping his hands on an old rag. "When your mother left us, I didn't know how to raise a little girl," he said quietly. "So I just brought you here. Let you watch, let you draw, let you be near me. I thought maybe the noise of the shop would scare you away from this life." Aisha smiled faintly. "It didn't," he chuckled softly. "No, it didn't. You drew on every box, every wall, even on my invoices. I used to get angry at first, but then I realized your drawings made the place feel alive." His eyes drifted to the wall behind the counter where one of her childhood sketches still hung, faded but untouched. A girl holding a paintbrush taller than herself. The lump in Aisha's throat grew heavier. "If I go, you'll be alone." Karim took a deep breath, his voice steady but soft. "If you stay, I'll still grow old. But if you go, I'll get to live long enough to see what you become." He reached for her hand, rough, calloused fingers wrapping around hers. "The world's waiting for you, my girl. Don't let me be the reason you stop walking." A tear escaped down her cheek as thunder rolled overhead. In that moment, the little shop felt like both a home and a goodbye. The bus station smelled of wet pavement, diesel, and the faint bitterness of instant coffee from the vending machine in the corner. Aisha stood in line with her suitcase, her hands trembling around the handle. Every sound, the hiss of brakes, the shuffle of shoes, the low hum of voices felt distant, as though she were moving through someone else's life. When the driver called for passengers to board, her breath caught in her chest. This was it, the moment her life would split in two before and after. Her father had insisted on walking her to the stop despite the rain. He stood a few feet behind her now, his gray shirt clinging to his shoulders, his hair soaked but his eyes steady. In his hand was a small paper bag. "Your mother's old scarf," he said, pressing it into her palm. "She used to wear it on cold mornings. Keep it close. It'll remind you that home isn't a place, it's people who love you." Aisha tried to smile, but her lips quivered. She wanted to say something profound, something worthy of the moment, but all that came out was a whisper. "I'll write every week." He nodded. "I know you will." When the bus door creaked open, she climbed the steps slowly, each one feeling heavier than the last. She turned back at the top, memorizing every detail. The puddles at his feet, the yellow light glinting off the wet road, the way he raised his hand, pretending he wasn't shaking. She waved, trying to freeze the image in her mind, afraid it might fade like an old photograph. As the bus pulled away, the rain began to fall harder, streaking the windows until the world outside dissolved into colorless shapes. Aisha pressed her forehead against the cold glass. Her reflection stared back at her, the same girl, but somehow changed. The city lights blurred into ribbons of gold and blue, and the steady rhythm of the rain sounded like a heartbeat keeping time with her fear and hope. Her chest tightened, tears mixing with the condensation on the window. Just one decision, she whispered to her reflection, her voice barely audible over the hum of the engine, and life changed. Outside, the city disappeared behind her. Ahead, only darkness and the promise of something new. Years passed like pages turning in a book Aisha barely had time to read. The city of London had become both her battlefield and her muse. Cold, gray mornings that smelled of coffee and rain. Nights spent painting in a cramped apartment above a bakery that never closed. The academy was harder than she'd imagined. Her accent, her clothes, even her silence made her stand out. Professors admired her talent but questioned her discipline. Classmates praised her colors but mocked her simplicity. Yet every challenge, every lonely night, became fuel for her art. She painted the way she felt, raw, uncertain, but honest. Her first exhibition came by accident. A gallery owner, passing by the academy studio, paused in front of her canvas. A man's hands covered in oil, mending a clock. It wasn't just a painting, it was a memory of her father. The man stared at it for a long time, then said, "There's truth in this, and truth is rare." Within months, her name began to circle quietly through the art scene. Aisha Karim, the girl who paints silence into sound. Her fame grew, but so did the ache inside her. Every success felt hollow without the sound of her father's proud laughter. She sent letters home, sometimes with photos of her exhibitions, sometimes with a few pounds tucked inside, but no reply ever came. Maybe the post got lost, maybe her father couldn't write back. Still, she kept painting. Then, one night, standing before a crowd of critics and collectors at her first international showcase, she felt her throat tighten. On the walls around her hung the stories of her life. Rain-soaked streets, flickering lights, a man's shadow bending over a workbench. The audience applauded, flashes went off, and someone called her name as if it now belonged to history. But Aisha didn't hear them. Her eyes were fixed on one painting in the corner, the little shop at Satter Road, the door half open, the light golden, the walls alive with sketches of a child's dreams. She smiled faintly through the tears that blurred her vision. The world finally saw her, but she wished her father could too. On that moment, she realized fame wasn't what she had been chasing all along. It was home. When Aisha finally returned home, the streets of her old neighborhood felt smaller than she remembered. The noise, the vendors, the hum of life, all familiar, yet strangely distant, like a dream she'd woken up from too late. Her taxi stopped in front of the narrow lane that led to Karim's fix. The sign still hung crookedly, its paint almost gone, swaying gently in the wind. But the windows were dark. The door, once always open, was shut tight and covered with a thin layer of dust. Her hands shook as she turned the handle. The bell above the door gave a faint, rusty jingle, as if struggling to remember its purpose. Inside, the air smelled of old oil and time. Tools still lay neatly arranged on the bench. A half-repaired clock sat by the window, and her childhood sketch, the little girl with the oversized brush, still hung on the wall. Only now, it had yellowed with age, its edges curling like an old leaf. She walked slowly through the shop, tracing her fingers along the counters, memories flooding in with every step. It felt as though her father had simply stepped out for a moment, as though he might walk through the door and say, "The tea's ready, my girl." But silence answered instead. A neighbor passing by told her softly what she already feared. Her father had fallen ill a year ago, quietly, without complaint, and never recovered. That night, Aisha unpacked one of her paintings, the one she had never sold, never shown to anyone. It was of a girl standing in the rain, a small figure caught between two worlds, the past and the future. She hung it on the back wall of the shop, right above her father's workbench. The light from the window fell across it perfectly, just as it had when she was a child sketching beside him. Aisha stood back, tears glimmering in her eyes, and whispered, "You were right, Baba. The world was waiting, but I carried you with me the whole way." She signed the corner softly, the same way she did every time, for PureHubKindness, because one act of love can change everything.